Okay, I'm Rose. I'm the cross-categorical teacher at Roberts.
I'm Carrie McCorvey. I'm the speech language pathologist at Roberts.
Okay, so I went ahead and wrote everything down and forgot to record it, so now we're just going to discuss it as if we were writing it down now. We did the one teach, one assist model, and Carrie has been helping me with my story time in the classroom recently, and so I thought this was a really good time for me to implement the lesson and then have Carrie take some of the data for their goals and objectives, so that she could observe me doing it and give me some feedback after the lesson was done. And so that's how we kind of decided which co-teaching model to use. For differentiated instruction, the student that had the least amount of support was Alex, and I feel like he did pretty well for the lesson.
He did.
Especially with answering the more in-depth questions. He did have a little bit of difficulty with calling out with some of the other kids, but that's pretty typical of this student. And so that's one of his behavior goals that we're taking data on for potential for next year, on whether or not that's going to be addressed in his IEP, is calling out and answering questions for his peers.
But he does have a goal for answering questions, but he just has to wait his turn for answering the questions.
Yes.
He has a language goal and objective for answering questions, which he's doing great on.
Yes. So in terms of like response to instruction, he did really well, just needed those few reminders on how to wait his turn and to only answer when he was being called on. For student number 2, Bailey was our average needs student. She did fairly well for the most parts for the questions that were actually in her IEP. We also took baseline data on recalling what happened in the story more in depth, and she needed a little bit of prompting for that one.
Yeah, and she benefits from looking back at the story and looking at the visuals to help her answer the questions, which Rose did after the story was finished.
So she did pretty good. And then our last student was Taylor, and he was our highest needs. And I asked him to label the pictures in the book, like while we were reading the book, before I would read what was on the page. I would pause and ask him what certain items were in the story. And I did it so it's like I'd ask him like what the items were, but then I'd ask another student, okay, this is what's in the picture. What do you think is happening in the picture? For the most part, he did good. He was able to label a few of the items in the picture, or in the book, but there were several items that he needed help with, like pond. He needed help labeling that word, or picture. But other than that, he did good. He accepted all the prompts that we gave him.
He did, and he attended throughout the story. He does better with receptive language as well, so he can also point if he's not able to label it. He was able to identify most of them if she asked, well, show me the pond, rather than what is this?
I think the lesson went really well overall. All the students were pretty well attentive. The only maladaptive behavior, and it's not even necessarily maladaptive behavior, I think, what did we call him? Alex just gets really excited. So it's not necessarily like bad behavior. He's just very excited about what's going on. But all the kids overall were pretty well attentive and interested in the lesson. We got lots of data, so that was really exciting. And on the last page, for future lessons, I plan to continue doing like the whole co-teaching model, the one assist, one teach, but instead of having Carrie take the data, I'll rotate who's teaching between, so it's me in the classroom and I have 2 other paras. So I'll rotate who's teaching and who's taking data. So one, we get generalization through adults so that they know that the skill of listening and paying attention to an adult were generalized to all of the adults in the classroom. And I really like that we were able to take like data and how the lesson seemed to flow pretty seamlessly. I wasn't having to like stop in the middle of the lesson to like record data, or like stop in the middle of the lesson to address a child that was engaging in a behavior that wasn't necessarily appropriate at the time. I really liked having the second person there for that.
Yeah, and almost all of many of the cognitive and speech and language goals and objectives can be targeted during story time, as well as the behaviors. And so it helps when you have an extra set of hands. But it's something that we do regularly too, where, during whole speech group, like I might be the one to teach and Rose may be the one that assists. I try to present the story a little bit differently, even if it's the same story through manipulatives or them acting it out. So it's worked out really great, not just in this lesson, but throughout the year.
Yes. I like it a lot. And then for challenges and barriers that come in the co-teaching or co-planning process, when it's Carrie and I doing it, I feel like it's not really that, there's not a lot of barriers because we have like a background in doing this and like are going to school for this right now. Where my parents don't necessarily have the same background knowledge on it. So in the beginning of the year, that was kind of a barrier, kind of learning how data needed to be collected and who the data needed to be collected on. But I sat down with my paras and we made a schedule on like who's getting data taken on what days of the week. And then it was just a matter of sitting down and working with the paras and like explaining how data was going to be collected and when data was going to be collected and what the data kind of looked like. And after that was done, it was the rest of the year, that was done in the very beginning of the year, and the rest of the year did pretty well with data collection. And that was evidenced by the number of kids we sent to Gen Ed this year. So, yeah, I think it went well.
Me too. Good
Awesome.
job.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.